But first, the big news that we're tracking this hour, the situation in Sri Lanka, where thousands of people are continuously seeking shelter in displacement camps at various places. And now we have first visuals from an IDP camp in Vavunia's Manik Farms in Sri Lanka. A major concern in the camp is congestion, though the government is in sync with the UN and other nations in trying to provide food, shelter and medicines to all those displaced. However, access to these camps is still a problem. Humanitarian agencies had also warned to allow freedom of movement of IDPs and vulnerable populations. Sri Lankan government, in fact, has now released 111 elderly IDPs from Manik Farms and Vavunia camps. According to reports, an estimated 50,000 civilians are still trapped in the 6-kilometer square area controlled by the LTTE.
There are some 50,000 civilians still trapped there. It may be more, it may be less. The government's figures are much less, but we think 50,000 is a reasonable figure. For an estimate of how many left there, it's certainly a significant number. And of course, these people are in great danger from the continuing fighting. The civilian casualties, the numbers of civilian casualties hitherto has been pretty horrific in the last 3 months.
And CNN IBN senior editor VK Shashikumar has been tracking the situation in Sri Lanka, and here's a report from Ground Zero.
Nearly 3,000 LTTE cadres were caught by the Sri Lankan army as they tried to flee into the safe zone along with the civilians. The fact is, and the question in everyone's mind, will Prabhakaran and his top LTTE aides be able to hold out in the small pocket in which they've been bottled into by the Sri Lankan forces? Yesterday, one of the top LTTE people who've surrendered to the Sri Lankan forces said that Prabhakaran has 3 options. 1, to consume cyanide. 2, to surrender and lay down his arms before the Sri Lankan armed forces. And 3, to use the civilians trapped in the small 6-square-kilometer zone as human shield and escape by the sea route. Everyone that we've been speaking to in the IDP camp say that the LTTE was using civilians as a human shield. But the Sri Lankan army and navy are determined that the LTTE leaders must stand trial, and therefore all attempts will be made to apprehend them.